Tell me, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale wolf light? 'Cause it's awesome! Hello, I'm Notes, and Steve Hackett is back. For those of you who don't know, Steve Hackett is the ex-lead guitarist for the progressive rock band Genesis. For the better part of this current decade, Steve's been touring around with a band of really talented musicians, putting on shows and recapturing that early 70s Genesis feel with a lot of the Genesis songs that he helped create and helped write. And now that he's got all that touring and stuff out of his system, he's finally back in the studio and he just released his latest album, Wolflight. And it has a lot of really intense and really different flavors to it. And it absolutely begs for repeated listens. One of the prominent things that we find on this album that is very Hackett is the noodling on the guitar. Very Spanish or classical guitar that's prominent throughout the entire album. In fact, it bookends the album as well as having its own instrumental pieces throughout. And for those musicians that love a classical or Spanish guitar, they are going to love the hell out of this album. And in between all of these pieces, we have some amazing orchestrated and classical tunes almost. The overall atmosphere and the overall feel of this album is very dark and even gothic at times. For those who are familiar with Hackett's work, this isn't unfamiliar territory. In the early 2000s, this was very prominent in his music, along with Wild Orchards and To Watch the Storms. It almost feels very similar to those, but it feels like he took a step forward from those albums and reintroduced a lot of those techniques that he used to use back in the Genesis era. Even the title, Wolflight, is very fitting for this album. In interviews, and when asked why choosing such a title for this album, Steve says that it recounts Homer's Odyssey, where Homer just wakes up and it's not quite dawn yet. It's still quite dark out and he can see the light coming through, but it's not hit him yet. And that really kind of captures the essence of this album. It starts off very, very dark, and as the songs progress, they actually become lighter and lighter until you get to the end, and those last technically 2 songs are just so beautiful, and I'll get to those in a moment. So I think one of the best ways to really capture how this album feels is even with that song of Wolflight, where you've got those really, really deep sounds, those boom, 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 boom. Those coupled with that very heavenly kind of that shout out into the darkness, where you're whistling to keep the darkness at bay. I love that deep, guttural sound that's being captured without it being brutal, without it being too raw. You're waking up in the middle of the night, you're hearing the darkness. That's kind of what this album feels like. You're hearing the darkness and you're kind of yelling at it back, saying, no, I am going to push back. And as the album progresses, it gets lighter and lighter from there. The first of which, if you know me and you know this album, you know I'm going to be talking about Love Song to a Vampire. This really captures that vampire essence that I feel like our culture has kind of shied away from. You know, the dangers of the vampire, and not just like the mythical vampire, but also kind of the emotional vampire that feeds as well. So this is that love song to that. And it almost feels like a King Crimson in the Court of the Crimson King, especially with that chorus. Another song that I really want to bring light to, and one that I could arguably say is my favorite one, is The Wheels Turning. This is bookmarked by almost a carousel, and it feels almost like his older stuff of Please Don't Touch. It sets the stage but then completely changes it, so you're not quite knowing where you are. The orchestra that's playing with it, with the classical guitars, with the classical instruments, and then just the symphonic sounds that are going through it, it really captures what Steven is capable of, and I'm just loving every moment of this. I do want to talk about those last few songs, the Dust and Dream and the Heart Song, where all the rest of the album is very dark at times, even with that Wolflight song. These two tracks blend into one another, and I almost feel like it's one track. That Heart Song is so well done, where you've got those really deep sounds and those really heavenly atmosphere. It's just such a really well done song that I keep listening to it over and over and over again, and each time it just brings forth more emotion. So overall, Wolflight is one of Steve Hackett's best solo albums that he has done, and that is saying a lot. If you are familiar with this gentleman's library, you know he's got a lot behind him. So being able to say this is one of his best work is a really strong statement. With Wolflight, this is a really great addition to all of those really classic albums from the 70s. It's modernized, it's more contemporary, without being just flashy, without being a flash in the pan. I can tell that this is going to stick around for quite a while, especially with those deep guttural sounds coupled with that very light and very acoustic noise that Steven's producing. So what did you guys think about Wolflight? Did you think that it was as good as I'm saying it is? Have a listen to it if you haven't, because you will not regret it. Or is it just a little too showy? I really want to know what you guys think about this. I've read a lot of reviews about it, and so far it's been pretty positive. So if you didn't like it, let me know why. And of course, for homework, because I haven't done it in a bit, what was your favorite Hackett tune? This could have been with Genesis, or this could have been on his own. One of my favorites still is Shadow of the Hierophant, and if you've seen online, there's a video, I'll put it down below, where Steve Wilson actually guest guitars on it, and I weeped when I heard that. Now that's about it. Alright, notes out.